Hi guys, Stu here with a new video, and this video will be my updated 10.2 solo shuffle tier list video for season 3 of Dragonflight. And I already said I wanted to play the patch before making a tier list. I know that some people made like kind of a prediction tier list because they didn't really play the patch and they just went off the changes and on previous stats. But I go off with the believe that I changed my mind on the social for tiers from previously, but also with the changes that are applied right now and all the things combined, I think I have the meta in the grasp of my hand. And you will see currently I will be trying to explain every single placement on the tier list, so be sure to watch the whole video so you understand why I put X in Y rank, for example. Alright, let's start right away with the warlock specs. I think that is quite of a easy pickup because I think warlocks are very strong. There is only one spec where I feel like they are not as strong, and it's because of their damage profile and how it does. And the current landscape of Soul Shuffle, it feels like Affliction Warlock is not really that great. Affliction Warlock is actually good into casters because casters, they are going to stop you a bit less in general. They don't have that much micro CC. Often not, you have to try to bait the kick or have a lucky matchup where you have a second caster where the kick is more important. Let's say you are playing with a Destruction Warlock in Soul Shuffle and you're together. Often not, they want to stop the Chaos Bolt instead of an unstable Affliction. I think they can do well in some lobbies and they can do terrible in others. So I'm going to put them at B tier, which means for me it's good. B tier means it's good. It means that it is maybe average, but good. A tier means that it's meta. S tier means that it's God tier. I might put like another rank in between. C tier underpowered, and D tier it is garbage pretty much. But Affliction Warlock is not garbage. I think it's not underpowered, but I feel like it's really depending on the comps, and I feel like the lobbies, and I think that alone cannot like grant you another rank up, I would say, on the tier list. But Destruction Warlock, for example, I think it's very meta. I think it's god tier. I play Destruction Warlock. I love Destruction Warlock. I'm having a blast. If I'm playing versus melees, I know I'm not going to cast a lot of Chaos Bolts, but Incinerate actually does 70% of a Chaos Bolt damage, so why cast a Chaos Bolt if you don't have like the time to do so? If you have like a double coil up, or you feel like you have some time in between to do a Chaos Bolt, that's great. But I think if you can just spam Conflags, Shadow Burns, Incinerate, put your immolates up, triple rifting, that's enough damage to actually end up games like often and not. You just have to survive to kite, to be able to kite in line of sight of your healer, so you don't line of sight him and then die and complete up all the healer, because again, Soul Shuffle, you get all kinds of healers, so you have to play with awareness. I might make a video about it because again, I'm playing Warlock, so why not? But I think it's a fantastic spec, Destruction Warlock. It's also very hard to nerf it, because what would you nerf? I think if you nerf Chaos Bolt, it doesn't matter. If you nerf Incinerate, you might just do something else. But again, I think currently there is no way to get a nerf on significant things. Demonology Warlock, on the other hand, got a nerf, but also a buff. Doombrand is actually very strong. The Foresight is very strong. Now, is it stronger than Destro? In my books, it is, because it has damage that is not really stopped. Of course, you have to cast way more Shadow Bolts. You need to cast Hand of Cooldowns. But I don't feel like if you're interrupting a Demonology Warlock, it stops doing damage. Often or not, it just keeps on doing damage. If you have your Hounds up, maybe your Vile Fiend or whatever, it already does a lot of damage. Tyrant on its own doesn't do any more damage because you're not building towards like the big tyrant. You're actually playing either short tyrant, or you're playing without any talents into your tyrant, and you play like a PvE spec, which also works, by the way. But I think there is like a way where you can play Demonology Warlock a bit more easier, and I think it's good into casters because it's very hard to actually stop a Demonology Warlock, because why would you dish out an interrupt on a Demonology Warlock knowing that really your interrupt is not going to impact the damage of a demonology warlock often and not. Also, melee lobbies are a bit annoying, but if you know how to survive, often not you can get them into a bad spot and you can actually just blast them. Fellord is also very strong. It's a PvP talent. If they stand into it, it's actually very disrupting. But I know your biggest enemy probably as a demonology warlock is probably warrior, because they have blade storm, double blade storm, so they can actually avoid a lot of CC of yours. In contrary with destruction warlock, where to be honest, if you don't CC the warrior, it doesn't really matter that much because you have like a lot of instant damage that is actually very like big and lasting. But anyways, that's my take on warlocks. I know like some people may think it's not the case, but again, you have to look up the stats on Justfar if you want to. It's the most played spec and the most represented spec in on the ladder in 1800, 2100. I would also just say in general it has a bigger chance to get towards those bigger ranks, and destruction will look the same. I want to talk about priest. I think it's no secret. I think disc priest is S tier. The reasoning behind it is it's all like, again, I'm not really going to go for popularity of the spec and whatever, because I think this priest, even whenever it's bad, it is a popular spec, but it is right now the most popular spec. It is by a long shot. The queues are actually long because they want to pair up healers, not in a mirror matchup like disc priest versus disc priest, and that's why it's long for DPSers, because it's actually also sometimes long for a healer. For a healer, sometimes your queue is not instant, you have to wait for 2 minutes or whatever, because they are trying to match you up with something else than a mirror matchup. And currently we have like an abundance of disc priest, which I think is partly the reason why we have longer queues. But it's very strong, it has damage, it has mitigation. I think you can have very bad matchups though, but I think those matchups are bad for any healer. You automatically kind of have an advantage versus holy paladins, because you have a dispel, you have also mass dispel. You have also just in general the ability of annihilating damage like AoE wise with a good dome. Again, they need to stand on it, but the higher you go, the more noticeable the players are to actually stand into dome. The same for restoration shaman, to be honest. I think you have overall a good kit. It's very hard to nerf disc priest, but I don't want a disc priest nerf. I want the other healers to actually be buffed, so it has somewhat of a adversity versus a disc priest. But in general, I think if I have to choose between disc priest, a resto druid, a holy paladin, a preservation evoker, I think I would be more safe with a disc priest in general. If they are playing with full mastery, don't play full haste in social fall, it's useless. You're not going to have big heals. Dampening is way too hard, so you have to play with mastery. But if you're like in 2v2, you can go haste if you want to, but in social fall, please go mastery, because it's too important. That's the difference between a healer that actually can heal through damage and a healer that actually just is here for doing damage, and outside of that, the healing is just pathetic. So again, S tier. I think holy priest, it has a little resurgence. I see a lot more holy priest and preservation evoker. I don't think it's partly because of the strength. I think it just is a popular spec compared to a preservation evoker. But I think it has only throughput for themselves, and even the throughput is not fantastic. They have some CC, but in social fall, there are not a lot of times where you can actually stun into a fear. They are going to stop you midway, or you're going to eat a CC yourself. I think you have some occasions where you're going to win through throughput, but it starts to dwindle down after the 1 minute mark. After the 1 minute mark, I think the win rate of a holy priest goes nosediving compared to, let's say, a disc priest. So for me, I'm going to put them at I want to put them at C tier. I think it's underpowered. I don't like to put healers really that low, but it does feel like whenever I'm playing with a holy priest or against a holy priest, I often not feel like I can win most matchups. And yes, it always depends on matchups. It depends on about the DPSers being bad or not. But I feel like Holy Priest, they deserve the C spot. And the difference between a Disc Priest and a Holy Priest is like that big. Shadow Priest. Now, something I will be revising, because I think I don't know what the placement was of on my previous tier list. Where is Shadow Priest, by the way? I hear. I think in solo shuffle, the higher you go, the better it is for you. But I can't make a tier list based on 2100 top 50 players on the ladder, because it's not going to resonate with most people that are actually watching the tier lists and most people that are actually playing the game. So I'm going to say that it is a C tier spec. Now hear me out. Of course, I feel like some people are going to stop me and say, look, at 2100 they have lots of CC, they have actually a lot of damage, because it can do a lot of damage if it's if it's not stopped, and it really depends on the healer if you actually can survive damage. But again, you have to contrast it and see across multiple brackets. And I think for Shadow Priest, it's even more of a thing. Again, for Destruction Warlock and Demonology Warlock, the lower you are, the more difficult it is, because the healers don't know how to heal casters. It just is how it is at the end of the day. But in Soul Shuffle, it feels even worse for Shadow Priest. Again, in threes, I think the potential is way up, because you can choose your teammates, you can choose your comps, and based on comps, you can actually win with just a CC chain. But Shadow Priest in Soul Shuffle, people don't capitalize on a CC chain, unfortunately. So I'm going to put them at C tier. In my eyes, if you're like 2100 with Shadow Priest, it can go up to B tier or A tier. But if you're like below 2100 and the healers don't know how to heal, or you feel like you're oppressed, which is probably the case, because again, you see a lot of melee cleaves, melee lobbies at lower CR, and whenever you go up, you see way more casters. It just is how it is at the end of the day. I had like 5 lobbies, like caster lobbies in a row on my arms and my BM Hunter, which in my opinion, BM Hunter, they play way better in melee lobbies, because it's way too easy to actually land the CC or land some roots or do a lot of damage, while casters, they can be very annoying, because they can actually root your pets, they can do a lot of things that actually are very annoying. But anyways, I'm going to talk about it once I'm at BM Hunter. But I think Shadow Priest C tier. I don't know if people will agree with me. If you are not, please let me know in the comment section below. But I think C tier at lower tiers, and a bit higher if you're like going into higher tiers. Again, you have to reach those tiers first, so I think that's the issue for most Shadow Priests. I want to talk about evokers first. Augmentation evoker, I don't know how people can put them at A tier, man. They are just bad. I saw some tier lists, and I don't really understand how they put them at A tier. It feels like they're playing another game, in my opinion, but or they're trying. Again, I'm not a fan of like mixing tier lists in general. Like threes and Soul Shuffle cannot be mixed, because then you have like way different results, or at least it will not be coherent. I think Augmentation Evoker is a legit D tier. I don't think it's good. I think it's relying too much on their teammates. It's a Shadow Priest on steroids. So if your teammates are giga bad, you are going to be giga bad. If your teammates are somewhat good, you're going to get carried somehow, some way. But it's not because you get carried into your because you're playing a support. Really, you cannot finish games by yourself. It will never really happen by yourself to finish a game. You're also very squishy these days compared to previous patch. It's way easier to deal with an Augmentation Evoker. That's what I'm going to tell. And it feels like this. It feels like whenever I'm facing an Augmentation Evoker, I'm actually having like a sigh of relief that I'm not really facing a Devastation Evoker, which I think is way better right now in Soul Shuffle. So Augmentation Evoker, D tier. It's garbage. I don't ask for buffs, because it will dribble down to other parts of the game, and I actually don't like Augmentation Evoker. I think if you have a support spec, you will have and need a lot more support specs in the game to actually counterbalance it. Right now you only have one, so if it's OP, it becomes directly S tier. But right now I think it's D tier. I'm actually very happy about it. I'm very sorry for you guys that are actually Augmentation Evoker diehard fans, but I don't think it's a good spec. At least like balancing wise, it's a balancing nightmare. Devastation Evoker, I think it's actually legit strong. It also shows with popularity of the spec on like higher tiers, and it's not really a spec that is overplayed as well. So for the little amount of players that actually play Devastation Evoker, you have actually a big representation at higher ranks. That is why representation is not everything. You have to see also the popularity of the spec, and just in general, how does it fare in most lobbies, in melee lobbies, in caster lobbies. I think Devastation Evoker, they are very, very killable, but they have some absurd consistent damage that actually can be called burst damage, because that's how damagey it can be. And in my opinion, it's actually an A tier. I think it's meta right now. I might make people mad about it, but I think right now, if you face a Devastation Evoker and you face a good one, chances are they are like top damage, and it's very hard to stop a Sleepwalk, because if you're kicking it, it's another school. So it's not like easy. It's like, for example, a warlock that's like a destruction warlock that is spamming fear. You kick fear, but then you have chaos bolt and instant rays going on your face. If you're kicking fire, you have chaos bolts going on your face, and maybe also a fear. And Devastation Evoker has actually a lot of schools. I think in general, it's not as easy to stop. Yes, you have some lobbies where Devastation Evokers are not going to enjoy themselves, but I think right now you have better lobbies, and I think in general they made the spec at least relevant. Now they need to add more stuff, because I think like the disintegrate spam is ridiculous at this point. It feels like a Fury Warrior, but even worse. But that's my opinion. Preservation Evoker, I think it's actually on the level of a Holy Priest. It depends on lobbies. Again, you have some lobbies where you as a Preservation Evoker actually can add a lot of damage. I'm going to put them ahead of Holy Priest, because I think they're closer to B tier than C tier, than T tier. Like, for example, Holy Priest can actually be like around D tier, but I think the popularities of the spec kind of shows. But again, Evoker in itself, like the spec, the class, is not a really popular class. I would never play Evoker. Like, was it OP, I would not be playing it, because I don't like the aesthetic of the class. If there was like a human variant that is always playing as a human, I would be maybe playing it. But right now, I'm stopped by it, and I think a lot of people actually are stopped by it. So it doesn't matter how popular it is, but I think the representation is also very low. So the likelihood of those people actually have higher ranks is also quite low. So I think right now it's C tier. I do rank them ahead of Holy Priest, but below Shadow Priest. I will try to rank them like, doesn't matter melee, ranged, or healers. I know a lot of people asked me to do that. I will try to do that, but it will have some mismatches. So bear with me. But I'll try to rank them from left to right. I mean, so left is the better rank, and right is going to be the lesser rank. It's going to be a long video, guys. So grab some popcorn, put like on a break if you want to do something, but try to watch the whole video. I think you may learn something about it. I want to talk about like Shamans now in general. I think Resto Shaman is actually a good spec. It is holding back by teammates that don't know how to play, pretty much. Because let me explain. Because again, Earth Wall Totem is such an important spell that if you're not going to utilize it as a DPS, you're going to actually gimp the capacity of Resto Shaman to last a long match. Because Earthfall Totem can actually reduce the amount of CD usage that Resto Shaman has and needs to do. But if you're like walking out every single time and he displays it and you still walk out, at that point they have to spam a lot of CDs to compensate the damage that you're going to take overall. Again, I know it's hard that it is, because again, if you're like a melee and you're trying to chase a ranged, it's very difficult to stand just inside of a wall totem and the guy is going to like free cast on you. That's also not the greatest thing ever. But I do feel like the Riptide buffs and the 4 set and 2 set, I think overall you're in a good spot. So I'm going to put them at B tier. I might be pushing them higher depending on how it goes with the tier list. But in my opinion, it's not bad. I think it's good. But it's, again, if people know that you're likely being targeted and actually are a kill target, it becomes infinitely hard to win those matchups. Because again, your totems are going to spawn near you. So if you're cleaved and you're on the target, often or not, you just have to click on the Healing Tide and that's it. You don't have Healing Tide anymore. Or Spirit Link directly destroyed. and those things are actually like real things. So for me, it's going to be B tier because it is tied to things that are actually insta killed. But if you're not the target, it can actually shoot up. But again, people know that restoration shaman actually are very targetable. Enhancement shaman. Now I made a guide about it. I played it. Currently, I don't really enjoy it. I think in social fall it's not really playable because of the meta. First and foremost, like casters are actually a good thing for enhance, but those casters, the casters that actually are very meta right now, they just obliterate your things that you actually have for yourself. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's like, I don't know if I'm putting in D tier because I feel like there are other specs that I could put in D tier, but it's really close. I think it's really bottom of C tier. Like it's below Holy Priest. That's how I see it right now. I think you're either going to be carried because of your lotto mechanics, so RNG mechanics pretty much, or you're going to win because they don't know how to deal with you. For example, if you're playing Lava Lash and you're playing a Lava Lash build, you just have to press Dispel versus Flame Shock. That's pretty much all you need to do versus that spec. So if they're playing Lava Lash and they put a Flame Shock on you or on your allies, Dispel, and that damage is going to just wash away. That's already the flame shock damage itself because it's a lot of bad damage, but it can add up. And then you have like your elemental blast. It's very annoying to deal with, but if you see the primordial wave out, that's the point where they do like a lot of damage. So they have to deal with that. So people know at a certain rating how to deal with enhancement shaman, and that's why for me C tier is, I think, logical because of how they deal with. They think defensives are like pure healing, which again, I think Retribution Paladins are very jealous of the healing that an Enhancement Shaman can produce, but I think Enhancement Shamans, and I can speak as an Enhancement Shaman, is actually very jealous of like Shield of Vengeance, the Aegis, I don't know how it's called, like Protective Aegis of whatever, the wall of Retribution Paladins, which is a 1-minute CD by the way. You have a Divine Shield, you have Bobs. Shamans don't have that. They have only healing. That's great, but I think they need something else. Maybe I don't know, man. They need something. I know that again they have PvP talents that they can actually use, like Barrow, but I don't think it's like that relevant these days. You know, also you have a lot of PvP talents that you want to use, and sometimes you don't want to use Barrow. So yeah, I think C tier is relevant for them. Elemental Shaman is actually very strong. I think it's going to be A tier. I think ahead of Devastation Evoker. The reason why it's not S tier is because I think there is a separation between Destruction Warlock and Elemental Shaman. I think Elemental Shaman, the damage is not really stoppable, but it's nowhere near the single target damage that you can do as Destruction Warlock or Demonology Warlock. Elemental Shaman has a lot of pad damage, also a lot of spread damage. You will see if you look at the amount of damage you're doing as Elemental Shaman, you have like 3 targets with somewhat of the same amount of damage you're going to produce. While Destruction Warlock, they have the same damage, but on 1 target. So the pressure is way harder and way more annoying. But as Elemental Shaman, you have a lot of ways to actually support your teammates. Again, it depends on comps you're facing. You're better into caster cleaves, for example. Melee cleaves, you can do some okay things because you're not casting too much, but you are very vulnerable to a lot of the specs that are actually very strong. But I don't think they are like a bit. I think they're meta, but they're not like higher than that. I think that this is the right spot for them. I want to talk about mages. I'm going to talk about the worst mage spec. I think it's fire, and I think it's too squishy. It dies really quickly, and it really depends about the healer. I think I'm going to put them ahead of Shadow Priest though. I can put them even lower to be honest, but the thing is, I've seen so many good fire mages that they can actually make their spec work, and then I see like a fire mage on my lobbies where my Armswire is literally just critting here and critting there, and their HP is going to be lower and lower. I think glass cannon is a neat idea, but the issue is if you want to do and deal a lot of damage, like overall, like consistent, you need ignite to actually hurt a lot, and you need glass cannon for that. But glass cannon removes HP from you, and trust me, having 700k or 750k maximum compared to someone that has 1 million health is a big difference. It's like a big more strike crit on the farm, which is already like it happening every single time in every single minute of the game. So I think for me it's going to be farmage C tier. I think it's Baron 3s though, because you have comps that you can play. I think RMPs, whenever you're having a rogue in your team, you know you're going to eat good. But I think if you're just relying on like a few specs, like a few comps and a few lobbies to actually win games, I don't think they deserve a bit higher. I think Affliction and Warlock is, I would say, better than Farmage, so that's why the difference between them. But I think Farmage are on the same level as a Shadow Priest because of like how they are reliant on the comps and the healers to actually win games, in my opinion. Frostmage are definitely good. I think it's crushing melee lobbies. If you know how to play, you can actually like solo carry games. Frostbomb is hitting for a lot, but the higher you go, the more likely you get Frostbomb dispelled. So it's going to be relevant because it's giving you a brain freeze proc. But I mean, it's difficult. I don't think they're like on the same level as Affliction Warlock. I think they're really A tier. I know that some people are going to be mad about it, but I play Frost Mage. Whenever I'm playing Frost Mage, I'm having a blast. My win rate, like percentile, is really high for someone that is not really good at Mage. And from what I've seen, I prefer to play versus melees, and in general, you're going to face more melees in general. So I think you're going to eat good in most situations. Again, if you're playing versus a DK, the likelihood that you're going to have a great game is a lot lower. That's the reality of things. But again, if you face only one spec and that one spec is annoying, does it make you like a tier lower because of that? I don't think so. For me, it's going to be A tier. And Arcane is the best mage spec, and for me it's S tier. I don't care what everyone's saying. I don't care about popularity of the spec. I don't care about representation. There are so little arcane mages for so many people actually going above 1800 and 2100. I think it's insane. The 4 set does a lot of damage, like arcane missiles doing insane amount of damage. You have to build haste. Don't try to make mastery a thing about arcane mage, because I know you're going to do and deal more damage, but you need fast cast. And yes, you're very. I'm going to put them at 8 here maybe, because I think yes, you're like very like lobby dependent. If you're facing a hunter, for example, that has like tranquilizing darts, it's very annoying to have a lot of value on alter time. You don't have double ice block. You have some lobbies where you're going to hate your life, I guess, but you can also be very strong versus like a lot of lobbies that has no dispel. If you if you're facing someone that has no dispel, it's going to be a blast for you. In most situations, I would say you will have a lot of value on your alter time, on your barriers. You have the best barrier in the game, in my opinion. Yeah, I think it's maybe A tier, because I don't think they're on the same level as Destruction Warlock still. But people are like sleeping on Arcane because they're simply just less played than other specs. But trust me, it is really strong. Like the 4 set, I've played with it. It's insane. Like it's a very fun 4 set. Like they have like other specs has like a bit less of an interesting 4 set. I think Arcane Mage actually have one of the best 4 sets in the game. That just adds straight up damage for you, and it's part of your rotation. You don't need to change anything. So I think for me, it's a 8 tier spec. It's a meta spec for sure. I'm going to drink a bit. All right. So I want to talk about DH. Havoc Demon Hunter is still S tier, guys. It doesn't matter. I think they're a bit lower than Demonology of Warlock in my book, so because of how Demon Hunters actually function. You can actually avoid a lot of damage if you're playing very well. While Demonology Warlock is very hard to avoid any damage. I think Demon Hunter, what is actually making Demon Hunter so good right now is the meta first and foremost. I think you're very good versus casters in general, so obviously you're going to have a great time for that. You're also very good versus melees. Again, you can glimpse out disarms, so people that try disarming you, you can just glimpse out. Like you can have the disarm on you and glimpse and it will be gone. Your damage is very unpredictable. Like it's always there. Every time you're going to do an I-beam cancel, because you have to cancel I-beam. I see a lot of DHs actually not cancel the like I-beam and they stay into metamorphosis while I-beaming. Just cancel it and do your rotation, because you will do a lot of damage and you will have more time on metamorphosis. But anyways, that's a tip. Overall, I think Blur is very good. Darkness is very randomy, but it can sometimes just save a game. I think you can also jump into this guy if you're playing versus melees. If you're versus a ranged, you have one of the most annoying kits in the game with micro CCs, interrupts, whatever you have. So overall, I think having Demon Hunter is maybe the most versatile melee in the game. There's just one annoying thing, is if you're facing versus, let's say, BM hunters or MM hunters, they know how to kite, it does feel like a bit powerless. But again, I cannot like drop a spec based on a class that is popular but not that oppressing in general. So for me, it's going to be S tier. I think below Demonology Warlock though, because again, I think Demonology Warlock, like, people are sleeping on it because it's not fun to play. I play it, I can sometimes have fun, but I understand like some people don't want to play Demonology Warlock, and you have like two great Warlock specs, so the separation between Destruction Warlock and Demonology Warlock is there, so it means that you don't have one spec that is going to eat everything from the popularity and from the participation. You have like two specs that are quite equal in participation, but I think it's because people just prefer to play Destruction Warlock instead of Demonology Warlock in general, for example. So that's my take. I want to talk about Fury Warrior. I made a guide about it. I played it a lot since the new patch. They got a damage buff. I still don't understand how people put Fury Warrior above Arms Warrior. I think people are crazy these days. They see a buff, which it is a buff. It is, you see the buff in action, but it's a placebo buff, because I think the Fury Warrior problems are nothing to do with damage. It's not about damage. It's about survivability. It's about dampening. It's about how they have a lot of like abilities and properties on the spec that are actually nerfed in PvP. I think Impending Victory, your enraged regeneration, all those stuff are very nice, but it's dampening of a soul shuffle match that is going to destroy your ability to survive. At one point, someone is going to look at you and you have like no answers to it. Also, if you're stunned, also if you're disarmed, your self heals from enraged regeneration is not there, because you cannot hit Bloodthirst or Bloodbath. So it's easily counterable. Also, you can get kited. So if you're using a defensive and you're getting kited, it means that you're going to get full damage and you have no real mitigation. That's what I want to say. But it's definitely better than what I had in my mind before. I think also versus casters you do fare a bit more well than versus melees, because of like, again, you have ways to actually use the CD while you're stunned. It's interesting, but again, I think Arms Warrior is better though. So I'm going to put them at C tier. I think top of C tier, maybe B tier actually. I'm going to put them in B tier, excuse me, but lowest point of B tier. I think they're closer to C tier than A tier. I think they are stronger than what they were because of the buffs that they got. I think Rampage can hit and crit in total for 200k every time you're going to do that. So the damage is there. So if you play one of the builds that I've proposed, you can actually win games simply because of your damage. But then again, you're just a Demon Hunter with kind of the same damage, but you don't have the defensives of a Demon Hunter, you don't have the mobility of a Demon Hunter, you don't have the PvP talents that can save you as a Demon Hunter, you don't have a lot of mitigation or evasions that you can have as a Demon Hunter. So for me, it just is a lower version of Demon Hunter. So for me, it's going to be B tier spec. And Arms Warrior, I'm not gonna lie, they're not that good in Soul Shuffle. They're not really meta in Soul Shuffle. I know a lot of people are going to make some outcries about it. I think they're top of B tier. So I'm gonna add another row. I think it's B plus then. I think it's B plus. It's B plus. So it's not bad. It is better than good, but it's definitely stoppable. Like, you can get kited, you can get punished. You have great versatility, which means you can help and play in all comps, but sometimes it doesn't matter, especially if you're going higher. You face multiple caster lobbies, you face multiple comps and lobbies that actually can just stop you right away. You have only two redeeming factors, and those two are Bladestorm and Bladestorm, because that is going to like help you do some anti-CC, anti-root, anti-properties that is going to stop you. But if you're using it wrong and they didn't use anything to stop you, they will just use it after your Bladestorm is gone. Your damage is very good. Honestly, the damage is not the problem. The problem is actually how they reach their target with current gameplay. For example, if you're facing a frost mage, your game is infinitely harder. If you're facing a destruction warlock, your game is infinitely harder because again, there's a lot of damage that you cannot avoid. If you're facing an elemental shaman, you're going to hate your life. If you're facing an arcane mage, you don't even want to target the arcane mage because you know you're never going to reach him. Depending on maps, it's even worse. I think melee lobbies are there, and you can actually win those lobbies, and you can do and perform very well on it because you have tools to actually face melees. I think you're quite good versus rogues in general because you have some neat things that can actually happen, and you can actually help your teammates. But again, I cannot say that they're like on the same foot as Havoc or Unholy DKs. I cannot say that Arms Warrior is actually better than Frost Mage right now. I think Frost Mage, they just eat Arms Warriors alive. I think all those S tiers and A tiers are very annoying for him. Also, Disc Priest being meta is annoying for Arms because you have no, I would say, your fear is getting DR'd by their fears. They have damage, which in turn will have you to play super defensively whenever you're facing one. If you're playing with one, the Disc Priest cannot just play as Disc Priest because they have to heal you most likely. They have to help you and support you, so they don't have the effectiveness of a Disc Priest in a Destruction Warlock lobby, for example. So for me, I'm going to put them at A tier, like B tier plus, B plus. I understand that some people may not like it, so please let me know in the comment section below, but I don't think it's that good. I think I really think it could be maybe A tier in some occasions, because I think it's very depending on comps, but I think I need some separation between them, and I don't want to put like every single spec at A tier because it's not how it feels in game. Let's talk about Retribution Paladin. I think Retribution Paladin are on the same foot as Arms Warrior. Again, I think caster lobbies just ruins them. They have the redeeming factor of having a pop versus melee lobbies. You can do very well, but if you face with a Holy Paladin, your effectiveness is halved. So you don't have the leisure to actually play around your defensives, because sometimes they can just lay on hands you while you were about to divine shield or you were about to do a bop. So it's really annoying to face and to deal with it. I think Retribution Paladin can carry games with sacrifice, can carry games with their damage. I think Hoj is the best stun you can do on a healer. You can also play Repentance, so you can actually soak some kicks, so your healer can actually free cast. You can play also Blind, which is instant CC, which is always going to be nice. You have some synergies with classes and specs, but I can't put them higher. But I think, are they higher than Arms though? I'm going to put them lower than Arms, but I think it's very hard to separate them too. So I'm going to put them like this. I think that's quite relevant. I think a lot of Retribution Paladins are going to say, yeah, you're right. Also, tier sets, it's not fantastic, so you don't really have added benefits from it. So, yeah, that's the issue right now. Let's talk about Holy Paladin. I think Holy Paladin are coming back. I think it is B+. The same. They are very close to A tier though. They might actually, I mean, no, they're lower than Retribution Paladin. It's very like lobby dependent. If you're facing melee lobbies, your Bob has insane value. If you're facing like full cast lobbies, your Bob has no value and it's not there. But basically, you're not going to use it. For it to be like something that is going to be nice for classes, you actually need Spell Warden. So if they actually add that as a PvP talent, then I think they would be very high. But But right now you have only throughput, and even then the throughput is not that fantastic. You have mana because the mana region is actually buffed, but sometimes you're going to miss throughput, and I think that's why it's going to be B+. Let's talk about hunters. I think hunters are S. I think it's a bit lower than demon hunter though. I think BM Hunter is better than Destruction Warlock in many regards. It has a lot of damage. It has a lot of CC. It's very annoying to deal with. Melees, they cannot really go on you effectively, except if you're like playing with a Holy Paladin, that they can freedom you. You have ways to like control games. I think personally the nerf is a placebo, because many players don't have a foresight yet even, so they will just not experience the nerf, and once they have the foresight, they will experience it as a buff and not a nerf. So right now it's S tier. I don't know how someone can read the nerfs and say, oh, they were S tier, I'm going to drop them at B tier because they got nerfed on a foresight that actually nobody is actually playing right now, because they don't have the foresight, because you have to be lucky to have the foresight. So I'm going to put them at S tier. People are like overreacting to a little nerf, which is still adding DPS if you're playing with or without tier set. So it means that if you're playing with tier set, you're going to feel a power boost anyways. Nerf or not, you're going to still play 4 set, and the damage is going to be still relevant. So I'm going to put them at S tier. I think people need to wake up and not overreact to small nerfs. Let's talk about Survival Hunter. I think Survival Hunter are... they're good, but... do I put them at B+ or B? Because I think Survival Hunter are very lobby dependent. But you can do alright versus casters, but it's not fantastic either. You can kite melees as well. You have something that is like interesting. So I'm going to put them at B+, but at the lower end. I think it's a good spec. I think it really becomes better depending on your teammates pretty much, and also how you play. But I can't put them any higher. I understand that some, like, again, people are always talking about me about BKMX being like the best survival hunter and best like solo shuffler. That's great, but I think you cannot really rank a spec on a person's basis that someone is like giga strong, because I think BKMX would be giga strong with any spec. So that is the thing which in my mind comes, like if he was playing Devastation Evoker, he would be good on it if he actually trained on it. Same for Retribution Paladins, same for Arms, same for Demonology Wotlk. He plays survival because he's a survival hunter fan, like he plays that. So right now it's going to be B+. I think it's a relevant rank for them. MM, I think I'm going to put them at B+ as well. They have damage, they're good, they're stoppable though. It's not often that you can do a sniper shot whenever you're like very targeted. So you're even going to drop the PvP talent in some lobbies. Your rapid fire does a lot of damage, but again, if you're like starting your cast and you get interrupted or macro CC'd or stunned while that happens, it really ruins your damage. Your aim shot is interesting, but again, if you're facing a DK, he just grips you every single time you're going to do that. So again, I don't think it's like insane. I do feel like the damage is there, so that's why it's going to be very high. Again, you can solo carry games if someone is not paying attention, but I think you have to also take into account that some people can also play very well versus you and not only with you. So again, MM is going to be like dropping in effectiveness how high they are becoming on the ladder. Let's talk about the resto druid. I think their power levels hasn't really dropped since the nerf of mastery. People overreacted like always. I do want them to put besides Disc Priest, but I don't know how relevant it is. I'm going to put them besides Disc Priest because I think it's still very strong. A Resto Druid, the only way how you can actually win safely versus them every single time is to make a big switch onto Resto Druid, and the Resto Druid panics or has to blow every single CD onto themselves, and then you switch back to the DPS. And you do that 2 times, and resto druids are going to lose the game normally. But again, you need to have teammates with a brain, and I think resto druid can actually guide and do well versus a lot of specs. And Tree of Life is still like relevant. Again, you can just instantly root a pet, for example, from BM, so the effectiveness of BM is very low. You can also root an Arms Warrior behind a pillar or Demon Hunter. You could also root a Disc Priest behind a pillar, which is very, very annoying because then they have to fade out the root, or they have to dispel themselves, which is not always going to be nice to have. So again, you can win games because of that. I think Resto Druid is very strong. I know that it got nerfed, but I think it's not relevant. You're still going to play Mastery for Mastery, and there are ways to play around it, in my opinion. Balanced Druid, I think it's S tier. Again, I said I wasn't going to make it top heavy tier list. I think the S tiers are like abundant. I think Bibumi are like on the same level as having the run, so I think it's insane how strong it is. You play versus a melee lobby, you can basically just play defensively until you have like an opening with a root beam into like a big eclipse, and you can actually win with a celestial alignment, excuse me. You can actually win with that. Your damage is through the roof. You have multiple ways to play the game. I think it's a fantastic spec right now, and it deserves to be S tier. For me, it could be even on the same level as Demonology Warlock, but I need to make some separation. I think they're very close to. I think those three, they are interchangeable. So if you're like saying, but Boomy is better than Demon Hunter, or Demon Hunter is better than Demonology Warlock, it's all good, man. I think this is interchangeable. So this, they can be like this, they can be like this, they can be like this. It's interchangeable. Those are like the top ones. And then you have like the plebs. Now it's not really a pleb because they're S tier, but you see what I mean, right? So for now, in my opinion, it's like this. But again, interchangeable. Feral Druid, what a fall of grace. You're pretty much becoming a one trick, which is doing 200k bites, and if you're lucky, a bit higher. Your ability to do insane damage lies with the people not knowing what the hell is going on. If you're actually casting Cyclone every single time and you're successful at it because people are not stopping you, your damage is going to go through the roof and you're going to win games like piece easy. But the problem is, the higher you go, the more likely you know that some people are going to know what you're going to do, which is basically try to Cyclone every single time to get Feral Frenzy up as high as possible, because your 4 set is really good, your 2 set is very good, and also your Ferocious Bites are insane. So you want to actually have more combo points, which in turn you will get it from Feral Frenzy from your Cyclone proc, from the procs from Cyclone you're going to cast. So if you're stopped on it, you're going to feel miserable. If you're not stopped on it, you're going to feel like a god, because you're basically going to crit and you're going to hit Ferocious Bites for a lot. Feral Frenzy is going to be hitting top 2 damage, and it's going to feel good. But again, I think it's too gimmicky, so I'm going to put them at B tier. It's still good. I'm going to write it because people are going to cry about it. It means good to average. Okay, so for me, Feral Frenzy, they're better than Affliction Warlock, so for me it's good. It's very close to B+, very close to A tier. For B+, it's really like the fine line between a B and A. It's really, it could be A, it could be B. In my opinion, it's closer to A than B. But for example, Feral Druids, they're very close to B+, but I don't think they're like on the same level as those specs, because they have like things that are not as stoppable as, let's say, a Feral Druid. Let's talk about DKs. I think DKs, again, a S tier spec. Those 4 are top ones. Okay, but you know what? You know what? I think this is probably S+. So that is the top 4. So you see, you have the S+. Again, people are going to cry in the comments. I'm very sorry, man. But I think I'm like having a logical tier list if you actually read between the lines. S+ means those are like the top, like those are the best specs. They can be interchangeable depending on lobbies. Unholy Decay is going to feel like a god versus classes compared to, like, say, a Demon Hunter, or Demonology, or Warlock, or Balance Druid. But Balance Druid is going to be a god in melee lobbies, in castle lobbies sometimes, depending on which classes you are playing. Demonology Warlock is going to be good in average on like those two lobbies. Demon Hunter is going to have full like best damage into melee lobbies where you basically are going to hit 2 targets or 3 targets at a time every single time. So those are like interchangeable, okay? So hopefully people understand that. Unholy Decay is insane. The placebo nerf that he got is basically making Rotten Touch, instead of a 50% buff, it's going to be a 30% buff on your Clawing Shadows. It's still going to hit and crit like a rock. It's disgusting. You know, like, instead of hitting for 120k, you're going to hit for like 110, 100k, and it really depends on your buffs. It depends on your setup. It depends on trinket buffs. Again, I think in general, Unholy Decay is like insane. I think it's also helped by the meta. And you see, I'm only having 2 melees right now. So how can someone call it a melee meta? It is really not a melee meta. Especially, they're going to use these two as an argument for, but we have melees. It cannot be a cast meta. But weirdly enough, the only 2 melees that are actually good versus classes are those two. So anyways, Frost Decay, I think it's... Look, I'm going to say the truth. If your healer and the healer against you are really bad ones, and they don't know what Frost Decay is going to do, it feels like it's S tier. But the higher you go, the more likely they know I am the target, and they will CC me, and I will have to pop something, so it becomes a D tier, because it's stoppable. I'm going to explain why. It's probably better than Augmentation Evoker, let's be honest. So I'm going to explain why. Look, Frost Decay, if you have played Frost Decay, you know what I'm going to say. You're going to go in, they're double melee, for example. You're going to go in, you're going to try to stack up your Frost Strikes, you're going to get the Strength buff. What are you going to do? Grip the enemy healer with a focus grip macro, Blinding Sleet, Unending Resolve, not Unending Resolve, but the other one, the AoE stun, proc from PvP talents. I don't know how it's called anymore, unfortunately. Unrelenting Winter, or I don't know how it's called, whatever. You get the AoE stun. You're going to then do your Pillar of Frost at the same time. You're going to do damage. You're going to strangulate the healer. The healer is going to panic. He's going to get stunned. At that point, he's dead if he didn't pop a CD. So the healer is going to get Blinding Sleeted. He's going to get stunned. Often than not, they do trinket directly. Then they get strangulated. So a 3-second strangulate. They, of course, got the AoE obliterate on the ground with the Death and Decay. So you're going to get cleaved. You have the AoE Drake if you're playing with that. You have a lot of damage, and you're going to keep that healer with you with a grip. That's the moment where you're going to lose a game. But if you are smart, your first usage of a CD would be trinket into a defensive CD, trinket into dome, trinket into, I don't know, I would not divine shield as a holy paladin, I would just freedom. So I would trinket freedom, pretty much. And try to run away, because that's possible. If you're like using your cavalier, you can actually run away as a holy paladin, but you have to use something. And you can also use Aegis as a paladin, so you're going to be good. But if you're not using something, especially a resto druid, often or not they die because they don't have hosts on themselves and they don't press tranquility. If you're a resto druid, just press tranquility. You're going to at least survive for 1 minute, and after 1 minute you have the same go, and at that point you have to realize, look, you need your hearts on you or else you're going to die. Okay, so that is the reason why people die versus Frost Decays, and they don't understand how, and they feel like it's OP. It is not. It is gimmicky, it is counterable, and if you're playing versus a melee, they can disarm you. Like a warrior, a windwalker, a rogue, they can just disarm you. Then they're going to use their trinket for the disarm. You stun it. He's going to use his Icebound Fortitude. to remove the stun. Then he's going to get feared or sapped or whatever. He's going to maybe use Lichborn if it's a fear, and then you have no defensives anymore. Then you're going to use AMS, and then you have nothing. You're going to die miserably in that 1 minute window. So again, people need to realize Frost Decay is nowhere near OP. It can work, but it's based on the intelligence of the healers against you. And the DPSers that are actually picking Disarm whenever they have to. If they don't play Disarm, they just deserve to lose at that point. But it's like an enhancement Shaman. If he pops Ascendance, you need to use every single CD you have to stop the Ascendance, and then you're going to chill. But people don't do that, so then they get one-shotted and then cry on Reddit, "Oh, I got one-shotted by an enhancement Shaman, how can it be teacher?" Use your CDs and you're going to be fine. Anyways, let's talk about rogues, and then windwalkers and mistweavers. Sub rogues, I think it's S tier. Could be higher, but I'm going to be putting them in between. I think it's very strong. It can solo win games, definitely. It's very hard to focus on. You're maybe the most tankier spec in the game. If you're playing well, you don't die pretty much. You can actually win in 30-second goes, I would say. And yes, you can also like play a cast sequence and you can win with that. Often or not, if you get stopped on the cast sequence, people start to panic. But you're very strong even without. I think the damage is alright. Times are way past where the rogues, or at least sub-rogues, didn't compete with damage. Now it can actually compete with damage, so for me it's going to be S tier, and I think it's a relevant tier for the rogues, the subtlety rogue. Outlaw rogue, that's tough. I don't see a lot of them, that's the issue. And I know that it can be strong, but I do feel like it scales with the intelligence of teammates, pretty much. If your teammates are good, you can actually do some pretty good things. If your teammates are bad, it feels like you're the target and you're going to die pretty quickly. It has some damage. man, it's very hard. I'm going to put them at B+, but I don't know. Okay, this, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. So I'm going to put them at B+. If you can find an argument that it is higher or lower, I might say, and to like congrats to you in the comment section below, that to convince me it's higher or lower, because for this I don't know. I don't face auto rogues that often. I feel like it's the least popular spec in the game. I don't find one in social. I feel like people play subtlety and assassination rogues these days. But I'm going to put them at B tier, at B+, because it has damage from the few ones I've seen. It can do good, but it depends really on the healer and on the DPS to actually capitalize on your damage and on your ways to deal damage. So I'm going to put B+, and I think it's very lobby heavy. Assassination Rogue, I think, is going to be A tier. I think in between the Elemental Shaman and Devastation Evoker. I think the issue is you can still be stopped by a lot of stuff. You can do a lot of damage, and yes, you have a Kingsbane, and you can one-shot someone these days, but it's really one of the most squishiest classes in the game, specs in the game. But also they can be stopped by holy paladins. If you face evokers, can also be stopped. A retribution paladin can also stop them. I feel like they don't have great defenses versus specific specs. I think BM Hunter eats them alive more likely than not. Arms Warrior can also do very well versus an Assassination Rogue. So in general, you have some bad matchups, but you have so much damage that you can sometimes win those bad matchups, and that's why it can deserve an A tier. I do understand that some people put them at higher state or a lower state, but it really depends on lobbies, so it's very hard to actually like put a clear tier for Assassination Rogues, kind of the same as the Outlaw Rogue, to be honest. Mistweaver, which is often not fist weaving, but now they got nerfed on their defensive, so it feels like you can actually turn on them and destroy their life. Basically, you can actually counter fist weaving by running away from him and kiting him. And the less pets are on the map, the more likely you're going to have some difficulties with healing your allies as a fist weaving monk. But you can also play caster mistweaver, but you get really low mana very quickly. So I don't know if I'm putting him at A tier, because it feels like the third best healer, to be honest. But I might put them at the same tier as Holy Paladin, because I think the gap between Disc, Restoration Druid, and those two is a tier gap, in my opinion. And there is a world where you put Resto Druid in A tier and you have only Disc Priest, or Disc Priest at A tier and Resto Druid at S tier. But I think it's very comp heavy and comp dependent, and that's why I'm going to give them the separation. Again, you can also tell me in the comment section below if you do agree with me with that thought process. It's a very long video, I'm very sorry, but again, I think it's interesting for a lot of people to watch it and to understand it. Windwalkers. I think the damage is really high. The defenses are there, but they do die. They do die. They are a target for sure. I think I might put them at B+ with those three, because they suffered from the same fate of actually facing casters and getting like destroyed by them. I think versus melees you can do well, but I think they are B+ in my books. Again, I understand like some people could put them at A tier. I understand that. But I think A tier for me, I think the top section is really close of each other. While I think B+, they're close to A tier, but they're nowhere near S tier. So that's why I'm going to put them at B+, because it's very close to them as a whole. And I think my tier list actually makes sense, because again, I understand there are a lot of specs being good. That's true, but that's why B tier means it's good. It cannot be that all these B+ and all those A tiers and all those S tiers are all clumped up at the top, because it's not a top heavy game, it's a pyramid. You see it's from this like this pretty much. And the unfortunate part is you have a lot of C tiers and a lot of D tiers, and those should be higher. They should be at B tier. And then it becomes somewhat of a balanced game. But the thing is, if you get like a fire mage going up, it destroys a lot of melees, so melees are going to be lower. And Shaman being very strong is going to destroy certain specs. Let's say specs that can actually get purged really easily. So for example, arcane and frost mage. So it's going to go up, and those two are going to be lower. And you can say for everything. For example, Shadow Priest being very strong, it means that healers are going to be lower because they're going to get CC'd to death. So you have correlation. That's why it's a meta. A meta is somewhat always the same. You always have like some sort of a pyramid where you have all the specs conglomerating into the middle section, and then you have like the outliers on top heavy and on lower bottom of the tiers. And that's how a tier list should be in my books. But again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. It has been a very long video. I'm very sorry. I'm actually glad if you watched the whole video. It helps me as a content creator as well, because again, the truth is there are ads. It helps me also to make something out of my hobby. But also just in general, I feel like if you listened to me for 1 hour, I really respect that, because again, it means that you respect the time I've put into the video. But again, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Hopefully you learned something. I am sure that you're going to disagree on a few things. It's normal, so please let's talk. And also give me your arguments on why. I don't talk about too much about popularity of a spec or representation, because again, I made a video about it. Representation is not everything, because it depends on the amount of people are playing a specific spec and how it dwindles down at higher rated. But if you have like such a low amount of people playing a spec and you see a lot of people actually being at top rated of these specs, it means that the spec is actually very strong. But anyways, this is my rant pretty much. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Be sure to stay safe. We will catch you probably very soon in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.